be able to go in a white neighborhood and feel safe. I want to be able, when a cop is driving behind me, I don't have to clench and be tense, okay? I want to be able just to be free and not have to think about every step I take. Because at the end of the day, being black is a crime.
In this America, millions of people experience every day the opportunity of having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America.
A few years ago, the Texas State Board of Education made some proposals to change history books. And to make a long story short, they wanted to whitewash history. The Atlantic slave trade between the 1500s and 1800s brought millions of workers from Africa to the southern United States to work on agricultural plantations.
But if this was all you saw, you might think like, oh, I guess the slave trade was about workers coming to work here on farms. That's not what the slave trade was about.
Slaves that worked there were well fed and had decent lodgings.
We said that African Americans were 3/5 of a human being in the Constitution.
It's complicated, man. They sort of forged a frickin' nation, and they were brave and they were brilliant and they had these great ideas, and then they were effed up because they owned human beings. Teach both.
And we complain a lot of times on this show about how we sort of enslave people. Prisons, we still specifically target certain groups of people.
They stopped hiring slave labor.
Yeah.
Hiring.
Young black men commit homicides at a rate 10 times greater than whites and Hispanics combined.
Have you not read any history of the United States of America? How many lynchings there have been in this country? There were 3,959 victims of what they call racial terror lynchings.
Oh, wow! Hold on now.
Hang on.
That's it! Yeah!
I thought it was flat out racist, questioning his academic career, the whole birther nonsense.
A boy last week, who was 16 in San Francisco, told me, I got no country, I've got no flag. Now he's only 16 years old. These Negro boys and girls who at 16 and 17 don't believe the country means anything that it says and don't feel they have any place here.
We have yet another instance of an unarmed black man being shot to death.
A while ago, there was a video featuring a California Highway Patrol officer beating a black woman on the side of the freeway.
Alton Sterling was the 558th person to be shot and killed by a police officer.
There was a 17-year-old black boy who was shot and killed in Florida.
Are you following him? Yeah, okay, we don't need you to do that.
How can you say Trayvon was the aggressor? You have the call, you have the evidence. Zimmerman called it in, saying, I'm following him. Dispatcher says, don't follow him.
What if Trayvon Martin had a gun on that sidewalk? What would have happened then? He could have shot George Zimmerman because he was feared for his life.
I don't give a shit what people have to say. He wasn't doing anything. He was a 17-year-old boy. When the ambulance arrived at the scene, you know what they found? They found Skittles and Arizona iced tea in his pocket.
Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard.
Oh! So apparently a lot of people are confused. Why do they say Black Lives Matter? Well, all lives matter. No, you knucklehead. It doesn't mean only Black Lives Matter. No, it means that black lives historically and today have not mattered.
Beyonce's new song and video Formation has been deemed a Black Power anthem, as well as an endorsement for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Today, representatives of the Black Lives Matter movement have released a set of policy demands called Campaign Zero.
A teenager got accepted to Stanford University after his application included one answer to the question, what matters to you and why? And all he did was answer Black Lives Matter with the hashtag over and over and over again.
It was announced today that Harriet Tubman is going to replace Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill.
Great news for Viola Davis. She is making history as the first black woman who won an award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama.
Not just African Americans in this country, and not just for minorities, but for the whole country. They improved the country significantly for for the better.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
When does it change? It's not like a situation that you can't understand. Here's a minority, here's an African American, here they are being abused, and it's the same situation. It's been 30 years since Rodney King. Amadou Diallo in New York, the reporter won a Pulitzer Prize for the reporting. Wow, great job by journalists. Great job showing the injustice. And what happened? What was the resolution? Where was the progress? Eric Garner? No, I'm with the protesters. Thank you very much.
And tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
Trying to bear witness for over 53 years, telling the truth and trying to say something about the least of these. But I think we are witnessing America as a failed social experiment. And what I mean by that is that the history of black people for over 200 and some years in America has been looking at America's failure. Its capitalist economy could not generate and deliver in such a way that people could live lives of decency. The nation state, its criminal justice system, its legal system could not generate protection of rights and liberties. And now our culture, of course, is so market-driven, everybody for sale, everything for sale. It can't deliver the kind of really real nourishment for soul, for meaning, for purpose. And so when you get this perfect storm of all of these multiple failures at these different levels of the American empire, and Martin King already told us about that. When I saw those pictures there in Atlanta, you could see Martin right there in Atlanta saying, I told you about militarism, I told you about poverty, I told you about materialism, I told you about racism in all of its forms, whatever forms it takes. I told you about xenophobia. And what we've seen in America is now these chickens coming home to roost. You're reaping what you sow. And in this instant, you have Brother George, where it is so clear it is a lynching at the highest level. Nobody can deny it. And I thank God that we have people in the streets. Can you imagine this kind of lynching taking place and people are indifferent? People don't care? People are callous? You have just a few people out there with signs. I recall the moments in which during the Reagan years, there was a few of us out there. In the 60s, you had masses out there. Now you've got a younger generation of all of these different colors and genders and sexual orientations saying, we won't take it any longer. But you know what's sad about it though, brother? At the deepest level? It looks as if the system cannot reform itself. We've tried black faces in high places. Too often our black politicians, professional class, middle class, become too accommodated to the capitalist economy, too accommodated to the militarized nation state, too accommodated to the market-driven culture tied with celebrity status, power, fame, all of that superficial stuff that means so much to so many fellow citizens. And what happens? What happens is we got a neo-fascist gangster in the White House who really doesn't care for the most part. You got a neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party that is now in the driver's seat with the collapse of Brother Bernie. And they don't really know what to do because all they want is show more black faces, show more black faces. But oftentimes these black faces are losing legitimacy too because the Black Lives Matter movement emerged under a black president, black attorney general, and black Homeland Security, and they couldn't deliver, you see? So that when you talk about the masses of black people, the precious poor and working class black people, poor and working class brown, red, yellow, whatever color, they're the ones who are left out and they feel so thoroughly powerless, helpless, hopeless, then you get rebellion. And we've reached a point now, it's a choice between nonviolent revolution. And by revolution, what I mean is the democratic sharing of power, resources, wealth, and respect. If we don't get that kind of sharing, you're going to get more violent explosions. Now, the sad thing is, in this neo-fascist moment in the White House, you've got some neo-fascist brothers and sisters out there who are already armed. They show up there at the U.S. Capitol, and they don't get arrested. They don't get put down.